some point in all of our reading journeys, there is a canon event. A moment that makes you feel genuinely moved by the words on a page. We've all been there. You're reading late at night. Everything's going fine, and then boom! One line hits you like a truck. You have to stop, maybe read it again, and suddenly you're sitting there with a lump in your throat, wondering how some words on a page could make such an impact on you. And that's what we're diving into today. Lines from fantasy and sci-fi books that absolutely destroyed me. Not plot twists, not epic battles, just lines that moved me. Quotes that were so perfectly crafted, so devastatingly true that I had a tear in my eye and I had to put the book down and collect myself. Welcome to Blackthorn Books. I'm Dallin R, and if you're a Stormlight fan, then you know why my friends call me the Blackthorn. Before we get into it, a quick note on spoilers. I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. I'll give you just enough context to understand why these lines hit, but I'm not ruining any major plot points. These lines work because of how they're written, not necessarily when they appear and what comes after. Though these lines do typically hit more at the back of a book because I feel like that's when all the emotional payoff is for books. That's where they're kind of supercharged in their emotions, is towards the end. Again, keeping it spoiler free. All right, hat backwards because I think I was getting a weird shadow on my face. So let's get into it. Starting from a line from a beloved book of mine, a medieval horror called Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. This is such an incredible, grimdark story. It gets dark, like dark, but it never loses that glimmer of hope that it maintains throughout the entire story. If you haven't checked it out, I would highly, highly recommend it, alongside his other works, The Black-Tongued Thief and the prequel, The Daughter's War. Buehlman is a phenomenal writer, one of my favorite voices in the fantasy space right now. Alright, let's set the scene. This line takes place near the end of the book. The main character, Tomas, has been enduring the most horrendous, like hell on earth kind of stuff. And a line is spoken to him about love that is just so beautiful, and it rings so true. So let's go ahead and read it. But it will be harder for you if you remember. Love is always harder. Love means weathering blows for another's sake and not counting them. Love is loss of self, loss of other, and faith in the death of loss. It's such a good truth that love, true love, often requires sacrifice, and at times even suffering. But that is a lesson you can really only learn from having life kick your and you decide to choose love anyways. I read that line for the first time not that long after my son was born. I was exhausted all the time. To be honest, a bit cranky from the sleep deprivation, and this line just hit me. It's not supposed to be easy, but it is going to be worth it, and that is just beautiful. The next line is from a book that, despite only coming out in 2020, I would say is a modern classic. I think this book is destined to be taught in high schools all across America. It's an absolutely lovely story, and you can read it fairly quickly. I think I read it over a weekend. Piranessi by Susanna Clarke. If you haven't heard of it, I'll give you a brief synopsis, but I'm going to keep it high level on purpose. I think the less you know about this book going in, the more you're going to enjoy it. Piranessi lives in a seemingly infinite, labyrinthine house filled with statues and a thunderous ocean. He believes this house is the entire world. He spends his time exploring and journaling his observations, and Piranessi begins to uncover a mystery that reveals a shocking truth about his reality and his identity. I know, not a lot to go on there, but it's incredible. It's written as journal entries as he explores and documents this house, this world. In fact, if you haven't read it, I would maybe even recommend skipping over this quote. I've got timestamps down below so you can go ahead and do that. I think everyone should experience this book blind, but it is up to you. Okay, you have been warned. An old man passed me by. He looked sad and tired. He had broken veins on his cheeks and a bristly white beard. As he screwed up his eyes against the falling snow, I realized I knew him. He's depicted on the northern wall of the 48th Western Hall. He is shown as a king, with a little model of a walled city in one hand, while the other hand he raises in blessing. I wanted to seize hold of him and say to him, in another world, you are a king, noble and good. I have seen it. But I hesitated a moment too long, and he disappeared into the crowd. When I read this line, I cried hard. It just hit me unexpectedly. Piranessi has this almost childlike view of the world, but it's often so damn profound because it isn't overcomplicated and it isn't over-intellectualized. Piranessi can see through all the surface level bullshit of the world and just cut right through to finding the inner beauty and the inner value and the inner strength and joy and peace of mind that simplicity brings. The next line comes from another short book that I read over a weekend. It might be the most beautifully poetic book I've ever read. It was written by two authors who, between both of them, may have the greatest command over the English language that I have read. It's an utterly transcendent book, and that is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El-Mohtar. If you haven't read it before, it's an epistolary sci-fi romance novel where two time-traveling agents, Red and Blue, are fighting a war to shape the future in a way that benefits the factions that they're a part of. They communicate by leaving intricately coded messages to each other across space and time, and that's about as much as I want to say. Please do yourself a favor and read this book. You can read it in a weekend, and its prose is beautiful. Okay, here's the quote. I love you. If you've come this far, that's all I can say. I love you, and I love you, and I love you. On battlefields, in shadows, in fading ink, on cold ice splashed with the blood of seals, in the rings of trees, in the wreckage of a planet crumbling to space, in bubbling water, in bee stings and dragonfly wings, in stars, in the depths of the lonely woods where I wandered in my youth, staring up, and even then you watched me. You slid back through my life, and I have known you since before I knew you. That's just so freaking beautiful. I love that book. That is just a sampling of how beautiful that book is. Do yourself a favor, read it. If you're enjoying this video and finding lines that hit you too, go ahead and subscribe. I make videos like this every week for readers who love fantasy and sci-fi. All right, moving on, and I'm cheating a little bit here because this next one isn't a novel, it's a manga. And that is my beloved, heart-wrenching Berserk. I don't want to overhype it, but screw it. I think Berserk might be the greatest dark fantasy story ever told. I liked it from the first page. Well, okay, maybe not panel 1, if you know, you know, but basically from the get-go. And the Golden Age arc, that's where I didn't just like it, I fell in love with it. There is a reason so many people love Berserk. Besides the shock and awe, it's such an emotionally resonant story in so many ways. There's one scene in particular that left an impact on my soul. I think about it at least like once or twice a month. A bit of a setup, again without any spoilers. Guts and Casca have just survived an ordeal that against all odds was stacked against them. Somehow they lived. But it took a physical toll on the both of them, Guts in particular. He's on the mend, and the Band of the Hawk, the mercenary group that they are both a part of, are camping, waiting for their next battle. Guts sneaks off to be alone. He's sitting against a tree, looking over all of the campfires from his mercenary unit. Casca follows him up there, and they have this conversation. Now, obviously, I can't read the whole scene because copyright issues, but I'll show you a few amazing panels and read a few lines that convey the point. I've got the Dark Horse Deluxe Edition. This is in Volume 3, Chapter 7, and the chapter is called A Campfire of Dreams. And Guts says, "You know Gaston, my second in command? The army's not really Gaston's thing. Once the war is over, he plans to open a clothing shop in downtown Wyndham with the money he saved up. He's more skilled than he looks. Nicole proposed to a woman, but she refused because she didn't want to be with a common soldier. He swears he'll get promoted to leading 100 men soon and propose again. He doesn't care how risky it'll be in battle. Well, I guess everyone staked themselves on lost causes. So when I look out there, it's like each of those lights contains tiny hopes and dreams. That's the way it looks. Maybe they've all brought their own individual little flames together here. You could scatter them just by blowing. So all those little flames throw themselves into the biggest bonfire, the blazing inferno named Griffith." I love it so much. These words just mean so much to me. There's been so many times in my life where you see friends succeed and you see colleagues succeed, and they tend to bring kind of these people with them. All these people kind of clamor up to them when they have their successes, which is great. And you love them and you cheer for their successes and you want nothing but the best for them. But at the same time, you don't want to be just this little bonfire that's absorbed into their bigger larger bonfire for you to just be something passing by in the night. You want to be your own big blazing bonfire that can be held up next to them, not in comparison, not in competitive nature, just as equals. And this scene just really conveys that so well, and it couldn't have come at a better time in my life when I needed to hear these words. And man, I love it so much. Anyways, there is so much to unpack in this scene, but that would be an entirely different video, so let's maintain focus and move on. Okay, back to novels. This one is a sci-fi, but it's such a popular series that I bet a ton of fantasy fans have read this one as well. It comes from the Red Rising series, and it comes from the last book in the series that I have read, which is Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. So technically it's all one big series, but you can kind of read it as the first 3 as its own separate story because there's a time jump and then it moves on to Iron Gold. You could read the remaining ones as a quartet. What I love about this one, aside from the time jump, is it changes to, instead of just a single first-person POV, it becomes a multi-character first-person POV. I think it is a great change of pace for the series and sort of helps expand the world out a bit. Or I guess the universe out a bit. This series has a ton of characters, a ton of plot. All right, some light setup for this. Some political maneuvering has happened, and things didn't go really the way a specific character had hoped for. This character is a rigid, disciplined rock of a character, and he gives this heartfelt line. I don't care about this character as much as the main cast, but there's something about a stoic saying something emotional. It just hits differently. It's like when you see the tough guy crying and you're like, you're not supposed to cry. Now I'm crying. For the record, it's okay to cry, boys. All right, here's the line. No, he whispers, this is not the end. I loved you before I ever met you. I will love you until the sun dies. And when it does, I will love you in the darkness. Reading that, I had to just put my book down for a minute and just sit in the silence. It was such a gut punch moment. I just had to sit there with the weight of it. And lastly, my favorite quote of all time. This quote emotionally ruined me. It's from the Stormlight Archive. Dalinar is my favorite character. I love his journey so much. It means so much to me. And I read it at a time when I really needed to hear these words. And that's what it's all about, right? Yes, there is the escapism element of reading fantasy. There's the self-insert characters. There's the world building and the magic systems and the heroes and the villains. But for me, it's uncovering these little truths that the author penned that just touch your heart. The words that just happen to be exactly what you needed to hear when you needed to hear them. They give you courage and strength and remind you what it is to be a human and alive. This quote is honestly probably better with no setup, so I'm not even going to bother. If you've read the Stormlight Archive, then you probably know where this is headed. And if you haven't, let this quote sell the series to you. Because no amount of hype and excitement and love for this series is going to sell it as well as this quote. So from Oathbringer. And after I give you this quote, this is a really special version of Oathbringer, and I'll show you why after I read you the quote. I don't want to hold you in suspense too long. The most important words a man can say are, I will do better. These are not the most important words any man can say. I am a man, and they are what I needed to say. The ancient code of the Knights Radiant says journey before destination. Some may call it a simple platitude, but it is far more. A journey will have pain and failure. It is not only the steps forward that we must accept, it is the stumbles, the trials, the knowledge that we will fail, that we will hurt those around us. But if we stop, if we accept the person we are when we fall, the journey ends. That failure becomes our destination. To love the journey is to accept no such end. I have found through painful experience that the most important step a person can take is always the next one. I can't read that line without tearing up. It's wonderfully heartbreaking and inspiring all at once. So there you have it. Those are my picks, the lines that stuck with me, the ones that I think about when I'm not reading, the ones that remind me why I love fantasy and sci-fi in the first place. What makes this version of Oathbringer so special to me? Comes with a story and a picture. I was at FanX Salt Lake Comic Con. I was there with a good friend of mine, and we were walking by the Sanderson booth, and he just happened to be walking to his booth at that time. I think he was between panels, and he sat down to sign some books. And we were just right there, so I hurried up and bought this copy of it. I got to meet him and take a picture with him. But what makes this so awesome is he was nice enough to sign it for me for the Blackthorn. Unite them. So cool, guys. So freaking cool. And yeah, here's the picture. So obviously, I will cherish this book for forever. I don't know if it's the only Sanderson book that he signed to the Blackthorn, but so cool. And I love this book. What did I miss? What lines destroyed you? Go ahead and drop them in the comments. I want to know. What made you cry? What made you stop and reread? What's still sitting on your mind months or even years later? If you enjoyed this, subscribe. New videos come out every Sunday. Thank you so much for hanging out. You've been excellent. Stay safe, stay happy, and keep reading. Peace. Feel a tiny bit far away this time. That's all right. Labyrinthine house. Labyrinthine? They communicate by leaving intricate. Damn.